Welcome to Preservation Perspectives, the podcast of the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, better known as the ACHP. I'm your host, Monica Rhodes, and if you're new here, the ACHP is the federal agency dedicated to safeguarding our nation's heritage through historic preservation, review process outlined in Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. I know that's a lot, but just go with it. But more importantly here, equally as important, we have the Latinos in Heritage Conservation, which was founded in 2014 by a group of heritage practitioners, advocates, scholars, and students interested in building a national network to support Latinx preservation efforts across the country. They host a conference every 2 years. They also host fellows working on a variety of projects and provide educational webinars, and also develop a Latinx preservation toolkit, which is excellent, by the way. And this toolkit serves as an introduction to the principles and practices of historic preservation, encompassing both community-led preservation and mainstream approaches. One of the first large projects that LHC launched was the Abuelas Project. It's a multi-year digital preservation initiative to collect, curate, and amplify stories about placemaking, histories, movements, and people that matter in the Latinx communities in the US and in Puerto Rico. Their newest project is a first of its kind grant program dedicated exclusively to funding Latinx heritage and historic preservation projects. So I'm very happy here to welcome LHC's Executive Director, Sehila Casper, to this program. And she's also a friend, longtime colleague. Sehila, you are advertising this as the nation's first grant program dedicated exclusively to funding Latinx heritage and preservation projects. Can you tell us, how did this come about? But also, I want to hear all about LHC, which we will, but I also want to hear a little bit about your background, and then we'll flow right into Latinos and heritage conservation.
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to say many, many thanks to ACHP and to you, Monica, for the invitation and having Latinos and Heritage Conservation, or who we lovingly call LHC, to be a part of this podcast. We're always excited to engage with other practitioners in your audience, so thank you again. So I am Executive Director of Latinos and Heritage Conservation. We're the only nonprofit in the country that solely focuses on advocating for the inclusion of Latinx heritage within the field of historic preservation. And as a part of that, I guess I'll start with the grant first to answer your question, and then rewind to some of the background stuff. So I have been working in historic preservation for about 10 years now, and have worked at the national level, have worked with local partners, have worked with other grant preservation grant programs. And what we saw throughout the country is that the biggest need for Latinx organizations and heritage sites is resources, right? It's something that Latinx and BIPOC communities face every single day. We have great stewards that are doing work over heritage and historic sites throughout the country. They're passionate. Sometimes they're ad hoc. Sometimes they're volunteers. If we're lucky, they're a nonprofit. But they're not engaged with traditional practices, with mainstream historic preservation. So these individuals don't know what the National Park Service is. They don't know that there are, federal grants out there that are available. A lot of these organizations aren't aware of who the National Trust for Historic Preservation is and what their grants look like. They don't know that their city may have preservation grants. And so what we recognized is that there's a really big gap of sites that are being funded by national, by federal, by local partners that specifically go out to Latinx specific heritage sites. So we saw this gap, and we saw that there was a need, and we're very excited to create the solution. So this year we have launched, as you said, the very first Latinx preservation grant specifically for Latinx heritage sites throughout the country. And it'll be, right now, it's one of 3 years of funding that we have. It will fund anywhere from $5,000 up to $100,000 for a project, 1 to 2 years, and it'll support various types of grant programs, which I'll save for later on. But I just want to say that this is a really big milestone, not only for our organization, but also for the preservation movement. We've seen a lot of really great work come out over the last decade to help support a lot of, wonderful BIPOC heritage work. And now just to see that we have Latinx heritage sites to have their own funding, the largest ethnic group in the country, is going to be just something that we look back on within the field of preservation equity and recognize that it was a really big moment for us during this time.
Oh, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more about the importance of building not only the capacity of organizations, but the infrastructure that's needed in order to sustain this work long term. So I'm very excited about this. So Sehila, could you talk a little bit more about the goal of this grant program and what LHG is wanting to achieve and what success looks like with the
Right.
program?
Absolutely. So the goal is that we are able to fund community-led historic preservation projects. And what we want to support are the organizations that have never been funded through historic preservation channels. Um, Nonprofits that are working in silos are working on their own. So the very passionate volunteer nonprofit groups that are doing this work that have never received any type of support from preservation groups, that's who we want to focus on. We want to focus on those that have been so under-resourced and overlooked, and those that necessarily aren't connected to the traditional preservation channels, and we want to help them. So the overall goal is that not only are we going to support them anywhere from $5,000 to a $100,000 preservation grant, but success for us looks like our outreach. Did we do enough outreach to communities throughout the country? Are we connecting with the right people? And thankfully, that's a space that we do very well at. We work with a lot of wonderful advocates throughout the country. Our audience, they are not historic preservationists. They're passionate community advocates and leaders doing this work. And so we're meeting with them. We're introducing this grant to them. So that's a metric that we see as a success. Did we reach our community? And if we did, then wonderful. The other part of it is did we make the application, the grant application, easy enough for our community to do? So, yes,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
again, working with these channels, we recognize that gap of technical, capacity, technical capabilities, being able to answer tenuous grant applications, like grants.gov. They create barriers. We do not want to create barriers. We want to promote access and opportunity to Latinx communities. So the grant application itself, down to the program, is something that we heavily vetted. We met with about 10 different types of grant systems, selected one that we knew would be great for our audience. We did user testing, and same with the questions, right? We wanted to make the questions not technical. We wanted to make the questions something that would be accessible, and we used general language. And we wanted to be able to have a grant process that something like my mother could answer. Not someone that has an architect, not someone that has a preservation degree, not someone that studied in this like you and me. We wanted someone that just needed help to be able to answer these questions so that we can help address those questions. So success is the ease of it, but not only that, we're also providing assistance with them throughout the grant process. Do you need help writing your grant? Great, we will help you. Do you need help overseeing, what the scope of work is going to be and what may need to be done? Great. We've had 2 and 3 conversations with you. You don't have to write in paragraph form. You can use bullets. You don't have to be a PhD. You can use 3 or 4 words as long as you're getting your point across. If it's concise, we love it even more. And so that is a metric of success, is the usability. And then the other metric of success will be a successful project. So currently, with this first round, we are funding capital projects, so bricks and mortar construction work, consulting services and training, project planning, programming, and interpretation. Again, up to $100,000. And one of the things that we really worked with our funder on is working through what we could fund. And some of the things that I see throughout the country that's most needed is capacity building. So thankfully, we got our funder to say yes to allowing us to fund things like consultant services for board, fundraising. How does a board fundraise? And how does that translate to long-term sustainability? Strategic planning. We need strategic planning documents because we know most nonprofits do not have a strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
But we know if you have a strategic plan that you're going to be 75% more successful than those that weren't. So those are things like that that may be out of the wheelhouse of someone that has run a nonprofit. But those are areas of expertise that we have. We've worked with numerous consultants. We know these things. So we're going to help you find that right consultant to oversee the project. And we're going to be with you there until the very end. So we'll be on calls with you as you do your RFPs for your consultant. We will be on calls with you with your architects. I recently hired a preservation architect to help me. I'm a historic preservationist alongside, so we could be this like power duo team to help, not only from like the planning up to the actual construction work. And we'll be working alongside of them for up to 2 years. We're going to be doing site visits with them and meeting with them, meeting with their hired consultants. So success will look like, did we finish a project successfully? Was, construction overseen correctly? Did we need to pivot midway and have the flexibility to pivot? And with us working alongside with them, they don't have to do cumbersome reporting or tracking to get approval for this. We're going to be an active partner alongside of them throughout this entire process. And we're a project partner to them, as well as a funder for this. So we have various levels of success, but I think the biggest one that we saw for year one is just engagement. And did we get this out to the community? Did we get this out to the right community? And we created scoring metrics that ensures that we are uplifting and elevating those that have been in the most inequitable areas within historic preservation or funding opportunities. And then we also, so that's success. And then also how many applications came in. Did we receive, our goal is 30. Did we receive 30 applications? And early on, it was early days. We're like, oh, nobody's applying yet. But I can say now today we have 80 that have applied, and it's going to close in 3 more days. And we have about 50 other organizations that are coming in. And so we're very excited. I can't wait to see what those metrics look like. And those are more internally, but it lets us know how effective we were in doing strategic and direct outreach to our community partners, but also how they were able to navigate through what hopefully will be an easy grant application for them.
And Sehila, I really appreciate just this like deep intention with which y'all have approached this work. I mean, it's the outcome. Like, did the project happen? But not many people talk about like all the hoops that organizations have to jump through to even get to or even like the process of applying of it is so it knocks so many organizations out, right? Or what did you do the last 5 fiscal years financially to for a larger nonprofit to determine like if you can manage or have the organizational capacity to be able to manage this amount of funds. The other thing I really appreciated is just being there like every step of the way, like even helping to fill out the application, identifying consultants. Like this is like, it's just kind of teeing this up and making it easy. And I think I haven't seen, in the space of fundraising or philanthropy, just that deep engagement in that way to really walk hand in hand and truly partner with a entity to be able to see this all the way through. So I think that's incredible. And then the other thing I'll say before we get to this next question, I want to talk a bit more about the deadline and who can apply. But the other piece that's ringing out to me is that many of the people that you have done outreach to and you're amplifying those communities, those organizations, don't consider themselves preservationists. And I know that was not an accident, that you said, these are the folks that we want to talk to. One, I'd like to hear a little bit more like how you've made that decision and like how you've been strategic about amplifying in this space rather than this space here. Because that's really fascinating. And then we'll move into a little bit more about the deadline and who can apply and all of those things.
Yeah, you have done this work, Monica, for dozens of years. I have. We've worked with Latinx BIPOC communities, and we know that the biggest issue with Black and Brown communities is having access to information. They're not connected to the circles that we're connected to.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had that intentional outreach. And so we have to work 2, 3 times as hard to make our projects successful. They don't have hired architects. They don't, have this historic building that has been walking hand in hand with local government for eons and decades, or, national organizations for decades. We don't have that liberty. So then we don't have the right to access this. Like it's not open to us. So we really thought strategically, just based on our own experience, my own experience of how it is that we could empower community and create action through this. And I know that you know this because you work the same way as that I do, in that we're going to be there with our partner hand in hand, making sure that this project is successful. And we're going to work 2 or 3 times as hard to make sure that it's complete and that all the milestones, that we identified, that they were overseen, but that the project partner feels successful and that they led that project themselves, that we empowered them, that we supported them, right? Not that it wasn't practitioner guided, this was community led.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, having had all of those experiences, we know that there's a different way to do historic preservation. We know that there's a different way to empower community and to have community-led preservation and to allow community to be successful, to empower them. So because of that, we thought long and hard on every different way that we could help make communities successful, organizations successful. And myself, having been a grant reviewer for, a national nonprofit for many, many years and reviewed these projects, having worked alongside, Latinx and BIPOC communities to apply, to help them be successful, but then also seeing them, fail or flail, seeing them need more, call me and say, can you help me with this? And knowing that it was outside of my job scope, but I'm going to help you anyways because I know you
Yeah.
need the help.
Yeah.
We know we want to be equitable to these projects and to help them succeed. So instead of just doing it on the side, we decided to radically rethink how it was that we support funded projects, how we as now, right, as a funder, a philanthropic arm, can ensure that we're radically rethinking the funding process, having our own projects, bump up against this, the bureaucracy or the language barriers that even I have to Google to figure out what in the world do they mean by this. To help them be successful. So we hope it'll serve as a model to other funding organizations, especially historic preservation funding. And if any of your listeners are interested in it, I am happy to share the matrix that we created to take all of the bias out of it and to ensure that like smaller Latinx-led orgs are being scored higher, and that we were creating a funding model and a scoring model that reflected the values that we wanted to be seen throughout the entire program. So thank you for saying that. I'm super excited and yeah, happy to share more on, who is eligible and what you can fund. So I can move into that if you like.
Yeah, let's go right into that. Yep.
Awesome. So for the first 3 years of this program, we are allowing nonprofits to apply. So you have to be a 501c3. And so this will include community groups, museums, cultural centers, historic preservation groups, historic sites, historical societies. You can be a historic theater. You can be Latinx led or Latinx serving. So, like my organization is Latinx led, and we're also Latinx serving. But let's say that you are a nonprofit that is based out of LA or Chicago and you are serving Latinx communities, then you also can apply because what we want is Latinx sites, Latinx heritage sites, Latinx organizations, or Latinx community to be able to benefit from this, this public good that we're all going to do together. Currently, we do not allow CLGs, certified local governments, or state historic preservation offices to apply. Again, this is to try to get funding to those who need it the most and those who require the assistance that we're able to give the most. And so the projects can be led by also grassroots community. Let's say you don't have a 501c3, but you've got a really fantastic project like a very historical and culturally significant church that's in your neighborhood, but you have a partner that's there that will help you, and you want to get a fiscal sponsor, somebody who can hold those funds for you, do all the technical accounting work, all the reporting work, and you want to be the lead of it as a grassroots nonprofit, will allow you to apply as well. So if you have a fiscal sponsor, that's great. If you have a project and you don't have a fiscal sponsor, and if you need us to help with you to find one, we will do that for you as well. Again, we want the project to benefit, to be a site that's significant to Latinx heritage or culture. And so anyhow, fiscally sponsored projects, we also allow that. For the biggest thing that I'm most excited about is that we're giving programming and interpretation for Latinx history and heritage sites. We have folks that are coming in that have a historical site or have a walking tour and they want to do a digital humanities project. We'll be looking at those. So project planning, we all know that construction, rehabilitation, emergency stabilization is daunting. So if you hire an architect, please, please, please hire an architect to do one study for you, to do multiple studies for you, to do all of the drawings that you need. Hire them to shepherd you through certificates of appropriateness, through permitting. That is so hard to do. We want to help fund that so that way we know that you have the map that you need, the roadmap that you need to help you be successful in this project. We also will allow for consulting services and training, as I mentioned beforehand. So if you want to hire a fundraiser to do a business fundraising plan for you, and if that's going to set you up for success, we want to fund that. If it's a strategic plan, great. If it's some type of business plan for your nonprofit, fantastic. Those are the things that we want to support when we're thinking about long-term sustainability. Those are things that we want to invest in for your own organization. And then the one that I'm most excited about, because I am a historic preservationist and I see that there is need, is capital projects. If you are in a historic site, if it's an adaptive reuse project, if you are, there's a historic theater that now serves as a community center, and it's to Latinx community. We want to talk to you. We want to help you do your projects, and we'll be funding anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 to help get your site back and useful, or maybe even just inhabitable. Like if you have to do retrofitting, we will help you support that. So it's through the physical preservation. The only thing we don't fund under capital projects is reconstructions. So the idea is historic preservation, and we're trying to be very preservation forward in this. So capital projects are for stabilization, preservation, restoration, and rehab of Latinx heritage sites or historic sites that serve the Latinx community.
How can people apply for the grant?
Great. So you can find our grant by going to www.latinoheritage.us. latinoheritage.us. And if you go there under what we do, there is a section and you'll click on the grant program. And there you will find everything that you need to know as to who can you contact, and who is this going to fund. So we will be funding up to $600,000 this year in funding. Like I said, anywhere from $5 to $100,000 per project. The deadline is on the 15th. And then if you have questions, we have an incredible grant manager. Her name is Patricia. You can find her and email her at patricia@latinoheritage.us. She can answer your questions for you. Make sure that you're set up if you have any questions at all. But the website is easy to find. The landing page, again, has a really great overview, what we fund, what we don't fund, what we're looking for. And if you need anything else past that, you can also email me at scasper, SCASPER at latinoheritage.us. And yes, we hope that we'll see you and your partners, apply for this. We ask that you share this out for within your community, your network. It's going to be this is the first year, but we will be continuing this for 2 more years, so a total of 3 years. So if you're hearing this and it's too late to apply, please reach out. We will be speaking with organizations as soon as this grant closes. We'll be starting it back up and starting to do outreach again, and this year have more long-term engagement. So we want to hear about your projects. We want to talk to your partners. And we just really appreciate you sharing this. Again, we recognize that a lot of the issues is access and opportunity, not having that information. So the wider spread that we can be in our network and getting this out, we'll know that our communities throughout the country will get this information and will be able to apply. So we appreciate anything that you can do to help spread the word.
All right. And so 2 more questions, Sehila. When will you announce who receives the grant? When is that happening? And then the other one is, what other things, in addition to this first of its kind national grant program, what else is Latinos and Heritage Conservation working on to preserve Latinx sites in the country?
Awesome. Yes. So we're really excited. The other great thing about this is that folks only have to wait until May. So it's a pretty fast turnaround time for preservation grants, right? Usually we have to wait like a year, 16 months
Mhm.
or 8 months. So we also wanted this to help those that really needed it, and we wanted to give a fast turnaround. So it will close February 15th, and we immediately will start scoring and vetting it, working with our grants committee to review it. Everybody does their scoring, and we'll announce in May. So in Historic Preservation Month, we will share all the wonderful organizations doing great work that will be supported throughout this grant project. And then as far as other things that we're working on, the first one is that in this year, 2025, we will be hosting a mini conference called El Movimiento that will be in Arizona and in partnership with Arizona partners. So if you're in Arizona or on the borderlands, be on the lookout. You're going to hear more about this. In fact, this is the first that we're sharing this out in public. So be on the lookout and let us know. We'd love to see you there. The idea behind this meeting will be us discussing what type of Latinx preservation movement and capacity building can we be doing within Arizona and the borderlands. But the really, really big one that we hope that you will engage with and things that we're working on is our Congreso conference, which is the only national conference that solely focuses on Latinx heritage and historic sites. We have it every other year. Last year we were in San Diego. It was amazing and incredible. And we had about 250 really great community leaders, brilliant activists, and allies come and join us. ACHP, you all were there. You have supported us in fellowships. So we always love having our ACHP partners there. and support this work. And so next year we will be in Chicago. So we're going to be in the Midwest. We will be amplifying amazing work being done there in the Puerto Riqueño community. We know that there's a lot of work around Pilsen, so elevating some of that work that we've talked about over the years as well. And most likely that's going to be in the spring to early summer 2026. So that's our largest gathering. That's one of our biggest programming that we do. We've been doing them for the last 10 years, and everyone looks forward to it. It's a great time. So if you want to learn who we are, what the spirit of LHC is in our community, I would encourage you to join us in Chicago.
Thank you, Sehila, and thank you for talking to us about the grant program. Thank you for your leadership of LHC and helping to preserve Latinx history in our country. The one piece of the many things that I'm just kind of recalling in our conversation is you mentioned, how this work is a public good, and preservation is that, and preservation of all sites is good for our nation's history to be able to expand and talk about all of the chapters in our narrative. So appreciate the work that you are leading in the country. So for all of those who are with us, please be sure to follow the ACHP on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in historic preservation news. Again, thank you to Sehila and LHC. I'm Monica Rhodes, and thank you for joining our Preservation Perspectives.